الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله النبي الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everybody that is tuning in to Beit al-Mal's channel. I am your host Nihal Khan, back for another episode of Quranic Gems. Today we're going to be going over Juz number 13, and more specifically the story of the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. It's surah number 12. And it's a very unique surah, and I'll tell you why. Number one, it's one of the few surahs in the Quran wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually speaks about the life of the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam from beginning till end. No other prophets are mentioned minus the father of Ibrahim or the father of Yusuf alayhi salam. And specifically the verses, every single one of them connects back to Yusuf alayhi salam and his story. Often within other stories within the Quran related to the prophets, you see there's a lot of jumping around, which is a reason of its own, which we're not going to get into right now. But here you have a direct story related from beginning to end. It is a story filled with tragedy, with sadness, with envy, with loss, but also with hope, with happiness and ease, showcasing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. The verse that I have on the screen right now is verse number 53. And in my estimation, this verse, and also the estimation of other ulama as well, showcases a summary of what exactly is occurring in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. In verse number 53, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي. This is actually the first verse of Juz number 13, which we're going over today, and was said by Zulaykha, the woman that had tempted Yusuf alayhi salam, or should I say that she tried to tempt him, right? And we see within this story of Yusuf alayhi salam, what exactly occurs. Number one, Yaqub alayhi salam, his father, showcases that he truly loved his son more so than his other sons, right? He was the youngest son, or one of the youngest sons at that time, and he has a dream showcasing what? رأيت القمر والشمس والقمر رأيتهم لي ساجدين, right? That he saw the sun and the moon and 11 planets bowing to him. Now this story, this dream, is related at the beginning of the surah, and at the end we see what? It's also showcasing how the dream is being fulfilled. وَرَفَعَ أَبَوَيْهِ عَلَى الْعَرْشِ وَخَرُّوا لَهُ سُجَّدًا. And he put his mom and his dad upon the throne that he was sitting in as a treasurer within Egypt, and as somebody who had risen as being an orphan, as being somebody who, though he was not literally an orphan, though he didn't know about the state of his family, though he was raised in a way where he spent time in jail for a crime that he didn't commit. There was so much that was going on in his life to showcase that society simply was not going to work in his favor. But he beat the odds, sold into slavery, taken away from his family, thought to have been killed, thrown at the bottom of a well, tempted by a woman for a crime that he did not do, sent into jail for years for something he didn't do, seeking to establish an intercessor on the outside that could help him, who forgets about him. And finally, when he makes his way out, we see that he is put into a position of leadership, a position of honesty. And that eventually earns him a good place with the people, and eventually also a good place with his brothers, from whom he was put into a position that he could have taken revenge from them. We know that the story of the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, at the end of it, his brothers were standing right in front of him. And Yusuf alayhi salam, as a plan that he had made, he decided to keep their younger brother Binyamin and send them back to their father to showcase what? That they messed up once again. And once they eventually came back to Egypt, and Yusuf alayhi salam showcased that he truly is Yusuf, and his brothers actually recognized it. They said, قَالُوا أَإِنَّكَ لَأَنْتَ يُوسُف قَالَ أَنَا يُوسُف وَهَذَا أَخِي. Indeed, I am Joseph. Indeed, I am Yusuf. وَهَذَا أَخِي. And this is my brother. قَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. After you go through everything, you don't look at that success on yourself, but rather you relate it back to who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I actually want to mention something that many of you may or may not be familiar with, but the story of Yusuf alayhi salam truly spoke to me when I actually heard Dr. Yusuf Abdus Salam of the exonerated Central Park 5 once speak. For those of you that don't know his story, you should know his story. He is a Muslim American from New York City who was accused of a crime that him nor the people that were convicted with him committed. and they were minors. And at that time period in the 90s, the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, had actually taken an ad out in a newspaper, paid almost 80-something thousand dollars for that ad, beckoning that the world, or specifically the United States court system, should sentence these young men to what? To death. But instead, they ended up spending roughly 7 years within prison, specifically 6.5 almost. And in those 6.5 years, Dr. Yusuf Abdus Salam says that I'm sitting there in a jail cell for a crime that I did not commit, reading about the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, right? I'm reading about Yusuf alayhi salam's false conviction within jail while I'm currently undergoing trial, or I'm currently serving a sentence for a false conviction. And not only that, for a crime related to what? Right? Yusuf alayhi salam, what was he being accused of? The wife of Al-Aziz was saying that he tried to tempt me, or he tried to rape me. And actually, the crime that Dr. Yusuf was wrongfully convicted of was exactly that. It was a rape of a woman. But eventually they were exonerated. And Dr. Yusuf and the other brothers that were with him were exonerated. Guess how long he spent in jail? Yusuf alayhi salam, it is said in the Quran that he spent فَلَبِثَ فِي السِّجْنِ بِضْعَ سِنِينَ. He spent بِضْعَ سِنِينَ, which the Mufassirin actually comment is roughly from 3 to 9 years. And one scholar, and many scholars, said it's roughly about 7 years. 6.5 years is how long Dr. Yusuf Abdus Salam had actually spent in jail. And not only that, you see the tragic story come to life at the beginning of the Quran, or the beginning of this surah, and you see Dr. Yusuf's story also come to life as well. And eventually you see what? That Yusuf alayhi salam ascends to a position of decency, ascends to a position to set affairs right. And eventually these young men, the exonerated Central Park Five, are also released and also put on a place where now they advocate for the rights of those who are downtrodden, who are wrongly convicted in the American justice system. So the reason I'm mentioning all this, brothers and sisters, is to showcase that the Quran is not just a history book. The Quran needs to relate back to our everyday life, to the occurrences that we go through, to a sense of liberation theology as well, where we seek the Quran to do what? To liberate people from the social injustices that exist within our society. So ask yourself this: how do we utilize the Quran to nourish the hearts and minds and stomachs of those that are the less fortunate from us, or the less fortunate compared to us? How are we doing that? That is the message of our faith. That is the message of everything that our life depends on. So here, this is the point where I ask you to take a look at the work that Beit al-Mal does, which is doing exactly that, is helping those that are downtrodden, refugees, those who are poor, those who need help in America and abroad as well. So I urge you, inshallah, to please visit their page and to continue to donate to them and to give back to everything that they have been doing, inshallah. I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you. I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts goodness in the rest of this month for you. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi